cut candidate for the Dallas Cowboys, who again is negative $24 million in cap space. Michael Gallup and Terrence Steele are my top two. Again, asked Drew about my Terrence Steele disdain. Apparently, I don't know if it's the Michael Gallup thing or the Terrence Steele thing that he's not enjoying, but what's the issue?
We're here to talk about players that you can cut to actually save money,
Mm-hmm.
not $4 million from cutting Michael Gallup. So much more likely that they would cut Brandon Cooks and save $10 million. But if they really wanted to save a lot of money, they would take a look at an edge that's making $13 million this year, that's turning 33, and Demarcus Lawrence could probably find himself on the free agent pile if the Cowboys really needed to make moves. Now, of course, Jerry Jones, being who he is, he has insider knowledge on what the salary cap is, and that's why they're carefully constructing Dak Prescott's extension to probably allow them to not have to cut too many people this offseason.
Yeah.
But Brandon Cooks makes a lot of sense for me because I just don't think that at $10 million he brings as much to the table. I just think it's replacement value. You could replace it with less than $10 million. You could replace it with probably a third or fourth round wide receiver at this point.
Yeah. I can get with that. I can't get with the D-Law thing. I think D-Law is super impactful. I think a restructure could be in order. I can't see us cutting D-Law because again he's super impactful, and I know the numbers don't show it. But in the run game, he's one of the best run defenders in the league, and he sets the edge super well, and he takes on so much so Micah can explode. That's kind of his job. I know that he hasn't put up big sack numbers since he got his initial extension, but I think he's too important. Is it possible? Absolutely, but that's my take on it at the very least. Now, re-signing candidates, I actually want to hear, who do you think that the Cowboys should re-sign? What's your take on it?
I guess it's an interesting question, I think, for what I think you guys need and what can help you guys get over the hump. I think that Tyron Smith on a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal isn't a terrible idea.
Definitely.
I think that, what's your guys' center's name?
Tyler Biotish.
Again, I don't know what kind of contract he would command, but
Yeah.
he played a bunch of snaps this year, and
Yep.
again, not too injured too often. He's only 27 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think ACL injuries are so easy to come back from now. I don't say easy, but they happen all the time. You don't expect any drop off in performance. I don't know if you necessarily need to bring Gilmore back with Deron Bland and Trayvon, obviously. And Gilmore played so well this year. I just think that somebody's going to pay him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or more likely, I think to draft a corner later in the rounds, or
could you see you guys franchising Tony Pollard?
No way, dude. I don't see the value in it. He didn't do anything to earn a franchise tag where we're like, man, we really can't lose this guy right here.
It's not that much though.
I'd much rather dude. You could get Tony Pollard in the draft by drafting Jonathan Brooks. I mean, that's exactly what Jonathan Brooks is. So if you want Tony Pollard, just go draft him and get him for 3-4 years. So I'm not interested at this point.
Okay.
I'm much more interested in drafting Jonathan Brooks and bringing back Zeke, if I'm being honest. But I think the other one that needs consideration as well for re-signing is Jonathan Hankins. When Jonathan Hankins went down, was around the same time we started to get pummeled in our run defense, and he's our mainstay. He is older, so he's only really going to get a 1-year contract, probably worth $3 to $4 million, really not that much. But Tyron Smith, Jonathan Hankins, our center, Tyler Biotish can all be in that conversation for re-signing for sure.
Well, and then if you let Gilmore go, what's the you have another corner that's a free agent. You have a
Jordan
safety that's a
Lewis.
free agent also, technically. I mean, I don't think bringing back the defense played so well except for in the biggest spots last year. I don't think it hurts to bring any of these guys back really, as long as it's
Yeah.
affordable. And the thing about it is, uh, you know, Dak's cap hit next year might go down to like 40 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Jordan Lewis is the other corner.
Shit, it could go down to 10 million, to be honest with you. It depends how much money Jerry wants to give him in his escrow account right away. But if he's going, I know Cowboys fans are like, we're going to sign all the free agents. Jerry Jones said we're going all in. I think he's much more likely meaning that he's going to go all in because he's going to hand Dak the bag. He's going to guarantee a shit ton of it. And these cap hits the next 3 years are going to be really, really low. Allow you to go in and get these players. I don't think there's a free agent this year that puts you guys ahead of the front runners for the Super Bowl next year, whoever the hell that's going to be. I know the favorites right now are the 49ers, but I don't believe in that bullshit. I'm just saying, like, I don't think there's a free agent out there that changes it that much for the Cowboys. I just think that they need to, figure out their playoff problems. And
I think the only guy that I really want, and again, dude, it's so hard to believe that we're going to get any big time free agent. I'm not one of the believers who's like, oh, well, Jerry said. I don't really give a shit what Jerry said on the goddamn radio show. But if I am going to say, okay, if you are going all in, if you want to go for a big name and a guy that I want, Patrick Queen is going to be someone that I really gun for. Leighton Vander Esch got hurt, and it really hurt us. And he's getting to the point where his injuries are substantial. He had a lot of neck injuries in college, and that really hurt him, and he's had back stuff, and it sucks. And I really like Leighton. So a guy like Patrick Queen, to bring him in, 4 years, $73 million, $18.25 million a year. First year cap hit being $7 million. Once again, if you're going to bring in a young guy to play that linebacker spot, Patrick Queen is one that I want. And the other one that I think you could take a look at is a guy like maybe Kenneth Murray for a smaller contract. But Patrick's really the guy I kind of want right now.
I just don't see you guys paying a linebacker with all the other places you have to pay. And Patrick Queen, the first 10 games of the season, his profile was so low that you might have gotten away with it. But I just think this dude's going to get paid. I think he's gonna set the market a little bit on linebacker contracts, and I just don't know if the Cowboys are gonna play in that field with who else they have to pay coming up, CeeDee Lamb and the like. I think you'd be much more better off going and getting Azeez Al-Shire. He's a free agent, and he was off-ball linebacker for the 49ers for all those years. Then he played middle linebacker for the Titans this year, and he played really well. So I just think that might be more of where you spend the money at, as opposed to. I agree with the idea. I just think that dude's going to get handed a contract that you guys aren't going to want to participate in.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Well, moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles, they have $14 million in cap space. Who's your cut candidate for this team?
Jalen.
we're gonna cut all the NFC East quarterbacks.
I'm just gonna cut every team.
Dak,
I don't want
Jalen,
to do this next year.
Daniel Jones, and then we're gonna draft Drake May, and then we're gonna cut him. So I think that's the plan for the NFC East.
I'm not gonna say that Kevin Byard is a candidate because I think it's almost a certainty that they're gonna cut him.
Yeah, that was definitely on my radar. For the viewers, it's 14.7 million saved for Kevin Byard cut.
I didn't even know it was that high.
Yeah, it's pretty high, man.
I am going to go with paying Dallas Goedert $13 million next year isn't going to be something they want to do.
Yeah, I considered that one as well.
They're paying a shit ton of money to their corners also. I don't know what their corners contracts look like, but
James Bradbury's making a substantial amount, I believe, for a guy who likes to get burned more than leaving meat on the barbecue. So, yeah,
listen,
dude.
James Bradbury gives up more yards than Deron Bland did in the second half of last season. So,
yeah, all right, bro. You're funny.
Just make fun of my team. We just can't win Super Bowls.
Oh, damn. Yeah. So if I remember right, James Bradbury, he was somewhere around that that 14, $13 million. Let's see, over the cap for everything. And let's pull up the Eagles because he was one I didn't have pulled up. But I am there if I can find.
I asked the question. Sorry for the viewers.
Slay is 10.9 saved.
I think Slay's still a good corner, though.
Yeah, no, he is. Why am I not finding Bradbury? Oh, there he is. 4.3, actually. So Bradbury's actually smaller. Yeah.
Yeah,
So 4.3 is Bradbury.
They probably stick with him at that point.
Yeah. So, like we're saying, Byard is probably a certainty, but that's 14.7. So, and
They
then
got some
obviously their
sneaky
tight
good
end.
cap space this offseason.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was even this high, and especially with those cuts, they can. And if they want to make any restructures or extensions, then
That's
they're going to be set pretty.
$27 million between Byard and Godere. It's a lot of money.
What do you think about re-signing? Because like I was saying earlier in the podcast, I think the Eagles have a lot of big-time names with not a lot of big-time production. Like Shaq Leonard came over, but did he really do much of anything when he came over? Right. No. So, I mean, Kevin Byard, he's a big-name type guy, but he's a cut candidate.
He's old.
Yeah, I just don't. They got a lot of names, but not a lot of production here. So I had a hard time finding people for re-signing. Who do you have?
I think it'd be hard for the Eagles to just let Fletcher Cox walk off into the sunset, but they're probably going to have to. It's probably DeAndre Swift, to be honest with you. Like
that's the one I had. Yeah,
you're not going to have to pay him a ton of money. Although the one thing that I think it was Miles Sanders they had the year before, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
His ability with Jalen Hurts, and I think I've mentioned this on the pod before, but his ability with Jalen Hurts to do the read option stuff, they really lost that. I mean, DeAndre Swift played well, rushed for 1,000 yards, which, I mean, isn't that big of an accomplishment, but, you know, it's still.
Most of his production came out the first couple of games of the year.
And I just think if you. DeAndre Swift, I like him. He's a Madden legend for me, but he's not the type of player that is like striking fear in the hearts of anyone. I feel like if the Eagles wanted to take their offense to the next level next season, they really need to get, and I'm not a big pay the running back guy, but if you're sitting there in the backfield and you're staring at Jalen Hurts and you're staring at Derrick Henry or you're staring at Saquon Barkley, I just think that's a little bit more intimidating. Also knowing that if you come up on that, especially Derrick Henry, if you come up on that, then they have the wide receivers to beat you deep, which is really all Jalen wants to do is huck it deep after he runs around in the backfield for a while. So I'm not even sure if DeAndre Swift, you know, shout out to the NBA legend Stromile Swift, who I keep wanting to say for some odd freaking reason instead of DeAndre. But yeah, I mean, besides that, I'm sure they have a player on their team, Nicholas Morrow at linebacker. He played 75% of their snaps last year, and he only makes $1 million. So maybe that's the type of player. But there's really nothing impressive on that team. There's nothing to me that's like, they got to keep him. Or
that whole front seven needs to be rebuilt completely too. I mean, the front seven's just really not that great. You have the defensive backs who really aren't really covering anything. It's just a struggling fest all around. When it comes to DeAndre Swift, wow, I wanted to say DeAndre Hopkins. Jesus. DeAndre Swift contract, 4 years, $22 million, 5.5 a year, 12.5 million in guarantees. First year cap hit being 4.2 million. Biggest free agent targets, I think, has to be like that linebacker spot. Obviously, they were looking for a replacement linebacker to try to fill in some type of gap for them when they traded for Shaq Leonard, and they didn't get it. Mm-hmm. Frankie Louvu, 2 years, $24 million, $12 million a year annually, $16 million in guarantees, is someone to take a look at. And then you have another guy like Willie Gay Jr. I wouldn't sleep on getting signed as well. So Eagles like to take their hits on guys who you recognize their name. So I recognize Willie Gay Jr. more than I recognize Louvu. So depends on which direction they want to go. And I don't really know if they're going to go linebacker in the draft because they don't really have a history of going linebacker early. So they're most likely to go offensive line, in my opinion.
The Eagles?
Yeah. They like to build up those offensive linemen over a couple of years. Jason Kelsey is going to retire, and some guys saying, "Oh, well, what do we do at center now?" Well, Cam Jurgens was drafted for that specific reason. So, don't be surprised if they take some developmental right tackle to replace what's his name, Lane Johnson, who's getting up there in age eventually. So they're going to end up probably going with like a tackle or something like that in the draft because Howie likes to be a step ahead of the game at every chance he gets.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen corner mocked to them a ton. So,
Yeah.
but if Jason Kelsey's retiring, Lane Johnson is getting up there. I'm not a super huge like sipping the Kool-Aid. That's not a Kool-Aid reference, just so everybody knows. But I'm not a big sipping the Kool-Aid thing on this Jalen Hurts. I think that tush push thing has a lot to do with Jason Kelsey too. So I'm not exactly
Yeah.
just chalking it up that if Jason Kelsey doesn't come back next year, which he hasn't officially retired for everyone who's listening, I wouldn't like super chalk up the fact that they're just going to dominate that tush push thing again, assuming
For sure.
the NFL doesn't make it illegal to begin with.
Any free agent targets for you before we move on to the Giants?
Honestly, I think the Eagles could target anybody and everybody and anybody with the money they have.
And the positions they need for sure.
Hopefully they're smart. Like
Hopefully not.
I don't think they need to go out and like. I just see it like they cut Kevin Byard and they go sign Derwin James. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Or they go out and it's.
They trade Hassan Reddick and then they sign Joey Bosa.
Yeah. Or then they just do something completely off the cusp. They go and hand some money to Mike Williams. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, right.
That's a sneaky. He hasn't been cut yet, so we didn't talk about him for the Patriots. But that's a sneaky good pickup for the Patriots, giving them that type of player that a young quarterback can just kind of huck the ball up to. For the
Bills too.
6 games a year that Mike Williams will be healthy.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, it's okay. It's the 6 games a year that he plays is like the 6 good games that Gabe Davis has a year. So it's like
well, you should just go get both of them then. Then you're guaranteed at least 12 good games.
Who needs Stephon Diggs when you have 12 games a year where you have some production from these guys?
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to the New York Giants, who has $11 million in cap space for a team that sucks ass. It's pretty disappointing. Couple of cut candidates here. I think someone that is definitely going to be there is Darren Waller, who's going to save you $11 million in cap. The signing initially was incredibly confusing to sign Darren Waller to a larger contract, and it clearly hasn't worked out. He's just he just doesn't care at the end of the day. Darren Waller doesn't care. You're saving $11 million by cutting him. I think that's my number one.
Yeah, Darren Waller, he hangs out a lot with the quarterback for the Browns. They just don't care about playing football anymore now that they got paid, and it's a disappointment, but that's also the pushback on these guaranteed contracts for these players, which I'm a big proponent in guaranteeing the contracts, and this is sometimes what you get when these guys get paid. Yep. They just don't want to put the effort out anymore. I don't see a ton of cut candidates for the Giants, to be honest with you. I'm guessing Darren Waller's the obvious one. I guess they could also cut Darius Slayton.
But that was the other one for me too. Yeah, definitely.
He's just so young still, and he's not making – what's Darius Slayton making?
His cut would be $6 million saved.
It's not a ton of money to save.
And he's kind of a mainstay there too at this point.
I also don't think he's any good. I mean, he's not changing anything.
Yeah, no, for sure. What about re-signing? Who you have for a re-sign?
It's just absolutely crazy that they don't have like a. It's either they just don't have any talent, or they, nobody's underperforming to the point of, that's nuts. Re-signing. Okay.
Yeah.
I think they should re-sign Saquon, but they're probably not going to. So I will go with. I kind of forgot about the Giants, to be honest. Xavier McKinney? I mean,
Yeah.
he played a ton of snaps for them. He's super young. Safeties don't get paid a ton of money in the league, so I think that's probably a good option for him.
The other one I have is Isaiah Simmons because when he went over to the Giants, he actually played pretty well. I was on board with it until I saw the projected. Dude, this projected contract's pretty large for Isaiah Simmons, bro. This projected contract is 4 years, $66 million, 16.5 million a year, $20 million guaranteed. First year cap hit 7. I was on board with them. Like, yeah, dude, he played pretty well when he actually was when he was with the Giants. But then I saw the cap, and I'm like, it
Who
just
the
doesn't
fuck
feel
is
right,
paying
bro.
him that type of money? Somebody that didn't watch him. That's the only reason.
It's a name. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Ben Bredesen played guard for them this year. He's pretty young, and he's a free agent. Played a shit ton of snaps for him this year. So
Yeah, and it's funny because their other guard spot's probably going to end up getting taken up when Evan Neal moves inside because he can't play tackle. So,
that is a nasty contract for Isaiah Simmons. That just I hope that happens so we can laugh at somebody.
all right. I have two different positions for the Giants to target in free agency. Offensive line, clearly, but also they need another edge rusher. If you're swinging big, I feel like they're going to go after a guy who's maybe a little bit older because I feel like it's a track record of the Giants. Daniil Hunter, 3 years, $67.5 million, 22.5 a year, $40 million in fully guaranteed money. First year cap hit being $9 million. So Daniil Hunter has been really good, especially as late, and he kind of goes under the radar year to year to year to year, and he doesn't. It's not get to. Excuse me, talking too fast for my brain. He's not talked about as much as he probably should be. He is getting up there in age. I shouldn't say up there in age. He's getting a little bit older. So I don't think they're going to go over. Excuse me, they're not going to go after a younger edge rusher. But yeah, man.
I feel like they'll be in on Daniil Hunter. Hopefully, he's smart and takes a payday elsewhere where he can play well because I'm a big fan of him as a player.
Yeah,
Assuming they strike out on Daniil Hunter, they're probably going to go try to pay way too much money to the combination of Josh Allen, Zadarius Smith / Chase Young.
yeah. I could. Yeah, Chase Young. I could definitely see. The other position I have is center. So I have Lloyd Cushenberry, center coming out of Denver. We talked about last week. 3 years, $36 million is the total contract, just for a refresher for people who saw that last video. If you didn't, go check that one out. So Daniil Hunter, Lloyd Cushenberry, the Giants need a lot, and they don't even have as much money as the Eagles. So not a ton of cap, casualties as well. You have that Daniel Jones contract that you're not going to be able to move off of until next year. They're almost kind of just resigned to their woes unless Daniel Jones plays well again. So that's where they're sitting right now, is almost in a bad purgatory. So they might end up with a high draft pick again next year. The quarterback class next year is not very good. So we might not see the Giants very good for a while,
I
which
have
is
a
fine by me.
question. I have a
Yeah, what's
question
up?
for you, just because we're talking about free agent signings.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, just off the top? And I don't want to. I don't. Thing is I don't want to give you time to prepare for these questions. That's why I don't text you before the pod. But what would
Mm-hmm.
you say? Then the last 5 to 7 years, like when we've really gotten into this and talking about it every day and the draft and everything, what would you say the top 5 worst free agent signings overall in like the last 5 years would be? I don't want to hear about Albert Hainsworth to the Redskins from 30 years ago, right? Like, what would you
Right.
say top 5? Like,
Worst.
we mentioned one of them today, but he's not even on the team he signed the contract with anymore. J.C. Jackson, the deal he signed with the Chargers,
Oh yeah.
has to be.
Kenny Galladay. That has to be up there too. That one's pretty bad. Who got paid? I feel like a lot of wide receivers end up getting paid and they don't perform.
Yeah, and I didn't want to put the Deshaun Watson thing on here because he was sign and trade kind of, but
Right. Yeah. Off the top, off the top is kind of hard. I can't think of a whole lot. Oh, there we go. Okay. Camera went out for just a split second. Um, Yeah, off the top of my head, Kenny Galladay comes to first, very mine, like just immediately front of front of my mind. So I can't really.
I didn't even think about Kenny Galladay. So what made you think, like, what brought you, like, what stakes out in your mind for that to be one of them?
I think seeing it, like we play the Giants twice a year, so and I was a Kenny Galladay guy when he was playing well for the Lions, and then he goes over to someone like the Giants, and he sucks. Not just sucks, like he sucks, like one of the worst receivers in the league sucks. That's what kind of stands out to me.
I did some
Outside of that,
research. I did some research on this before like we started, just because if you struggled a little bit, I wanted to throw some out there. But even
damn,
I
I
didn't
just saw
see it.
Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's bad. The Le'Veon Bell contract's pretty bad too.
What about the $88 million the Jaguars gave to Nick Foles?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I mean,
Damn.
this was a long time ago. So obviously, I said the last 5 to 7 years, but
Yeah.
The Seahawks and the money they gave to Matt Flynn. But that
Mm-hmm.
reminded me of the carousel of these teams that were like, Brock Osweiler is an amazing NFL quarterback. Like three
Dude,
different
that was
teams tried to sign
crazy.
this dude.
Yep.
There was a running back legend for the Cowboys that went and signed with the Eagles, and his career
Yep.
went to shit after that.
Yep. DeMarco. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was real disappointed when he left, and then he ended up not playing well, and then he ended up randomly revitalizing his career in Tennessee, and then Derrick Henry took over.
Yep.
So yeah, no, I remember that one really well too. Absolutely.
And then, of course, the Eagles also did Namdi, but I think that was obviously more scheme than anything. Trying to make a
Yeah.
man corner play zone just doesn't work out.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But yeah, I mean, I think Nick Foles takes the cake. I mean, they gave that dude $88 million.
Oh man, and it's funny because it's like a guy like Kirk Cousins is going to be in that range too, but it's Kirk Cousins. It's a little bit different, So it's, just to put it in perspective, for the people watching. Moving on to our last team, the forgotten about Washington Commanders.
I totally hijacked this segment. I thought we were done. I forgot about the fucking Commanders. That's why I brought that up. And I love the Commanders. I'm an Adam Peters guy, but they're just so obscure and worthless. I totally forgot about them.
Oh man.
Cut candidate for the Washington Commanders. Anybody and everybody.
Yeah, I had a hard time with the cut candidate personally. Real quick, $61 million in effective cap space, most in the league. Cut candidate, I had a really hard time because they all kind of just suck, and it's either not making a lot of money or you're kind of just forgettable and you weren't on my radar. That's kind of where I hit with the cut candidates. Biggest re-sign has to be, I think, Kendall Fuller. We talked about earlier. He was the only bright spot on that defense, on that team, really, for the most part. One just quick refresh of viewers' minds. 3 years, $42 million is the total contract. First year cap hit, $5.5 million. So I think that's a place that you go.
Logan Thomas makes $8 million next year, and he's 33 years old. So I think the Commanders could go ahead and let him go and save themselves their $8 million.
Yeah, and it's hard with a team. It's hard with a team like this too, where you talk about what's your biggest target in free agency. And it's like you said, anybody and everybody. You have $61 million in effective cap space, and you need a lot of positions, right? You can go with offensive line, you can go defensive line. You got rid of your two ends, and you have your defensive tackles, I suppose. But you need corners. A re-signed guy that we forgot about too is Cam Curl, I believe is also a free agent. So he could be re-signed as well.
I think they'd be so much smarter to bring back Cameron Curl, because if Kendall Fuller is smart, he's not re-signing with the Commanders. I don't know why he would do that.
Yeah, and they made a huge mistake drafting Emmanuel Forbes in the first round. Did not have a first round grade on him. Super undersized, and there was a I was just listening to something today, and they brought up how it was like Micah and it was AJ Brown on a podcast with this other guy, and they literally laughed at the Emmanuel Forbes draft pick because they get a AJ Brown was laughing because he gets to play against like the smallest, lightest corner in the draft. Drafted in the first round in NFL history, twice a year. So he's excited about it. So yeah, not a great draft pick, but yeah, they got a lot to work on. Luckily, they have the cap space for it. They have the draft capital for it. So they're going to need a lot of work at the end of the day. With these last place teams like Washington and New England, what do you need? You need everything. That's kind of what it comes down to. You need quarterback. You're probably going to address it in the draft. Luckily, at least Washington has some weapons at wide receiver, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, but you can add everywhere at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, free agency for them might be a good place for them to go get another wide receiver also, just because you're losing Curtis Samuel. I don't think you bring him back, and you just want to, if you are going to cut the tight end, you just want to. I think every team that's taking a quarterback this year needs to look at what happened in Carolina and realize that you need to surround your young QB with as much as possible for his confidence. Give him somebody to throw the football to, because what happened this year with Bryce Young was it was all bad everywhere.
Yeah, and then now Bryce is developing bad habits. He's staying in the pocket and rolling out faster. He's rolling out faster than he ever has. He's throwing away faster than he ever has. He's afraid to get hit now. I mean, just it's bad, man. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Anything else to wrap up this free agency portion, or you want to move on?
No, I think it's an important free agency for the Commanders. I think it's huge for them with the money they have, and taking a young quarterback who we're going to do this thing with May, where if in 3 or 4 years he's out playing Caleb, I don't think that anyone's really going to be surprised. You just can't go with him over Caleb at this point. You got to surround him with everything, because he's got to play that Cowboys defense twice a year, and you got to play the NFC, and it's not going to be an easy path for him. So they need to surround him with as much talent as possible to help him succeed.